If I asked you, let me ask you, if I were to ask you just to make a mental list right now, the top 3 things that are concerning you today as you are here. Top 3 biggest concerns in your mind right now in your life. Chances are, for many, many of you, in that list somewhere are personal finances. Personal finances are a huge issue in America today. As a matter of fact, I was stunned to see this. CNBC did a survey of Americans. Guess what percentage of Americans live paycheck to paycheck? In your own mind, just think. Where do you think this number falls? Here's what they discovered. 63%, so 2/3 of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. But I want you to know that's the low number. There were plenty of other surveys that say the number is actually 75%, 3/4. 3/4, anywhere from 2/3, either way the numbers are terrible. 2/3 to 3/4 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So they're barely making it. So that's why I said, for most Americans, personal finance is going to be in that list of things that they're worried about or anxious about or concerned about. It is a big deal. We just barely make it to the next paycheck, and we just barely make it to the next paycheck. And if you ask most Americans how to fix this, you know what they'll say, right? Give me more money. If I had more money, my problems would go away. Now, is that true? I think most of you are smart enough to know that this is, you got one of 2 things. It's either an income problem, and I'm not saying there aren't income issues, not saying that. But it's either an income issue or a spending issue. It's one or the other, and sometimes it's both. But the reality is, for the vast majority of the Americans living paycheck to paycheck, it's not an income issue. But I'll let you make your own decision about this, okay? Here are 3 actual stories. You tell me if this is an income issue or a spending issue. So there's a couple named Jane and her husband. He has variable income, which he's a salesman, so you never know what he's going to make each month. So that's very stressful. Trying to make it on variable income. Some of you have been in sales, you know how stressful that can be. So they have maxed out credit cards, they have a huge car loan, and recently they went to the bank and took out a $10,000 personal loan. Why? So that they could increase their timeshare credits. $10,000 personal loan. Now, is this an income issue or a spending issue? They're making it paycheck to paycheck, barely one more thing, and they go down. Is it an income issue or a spending issue? It's not an income issue, right? We all know that. It's spending. How about this one? Jenny and her husband Aaron. They have maxed out credit cards. So what they did is they went into his 401k, his retirement account, and took out thousands of dollars. They're not even close to retirement age. Why? By the way, if you don't know, that's a really bad thing to do. You will pay a huge fee if you do that. The government doesn't really like it when you take out retirement and you're not close to retirement age. So why did they take out thousands of dollars? Well, because their furniture was old and they wanted to update it. And now they're about to get a huge bill from the government. They already have maxed out credit cards and live paycheck to paycheck. Is that an income issue or a spending issue? And by the way, their old furniture wasn't dangerous. It's not like, oh my goodness, people are getting killed, we have to replace our furniture. It's like, no, it's just, we don't like how it looks anymore. Okay, how about this one? Chase and his wife Beth, in the first 2 months of the year, they added $5,000 to their credit card balances. $5,000 in the first 2 months of the year. Why? Emergency medical issue? No. They needed a tropical vacation. Well, who didn't, right? And they have a restaurant habit of over $600 a month. They love to eat out. Income issue or spending issue? And yet if you ask all of these couples, they're all going to say, we just need to make more money. Is that true? I could tell you story after story after story after story after story after story of this. And even from my own life, just hear me saying, I'm not judging these people. I have done this. I have done this and done it wrong big time. But the reality is, so many times Americans think that we have an income issue. The reality is we don't. We have a spending issue. And you could give them even more money because of that number there. You got people in there making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, still living paycheck to paycheck. It's not about income. So many times it's about our spending. Our spending is out of control, and it drives us deeper and deeper into debt until finally there's no more wiggle room, and then we're overwhelmed. One more thing goes wrong, and we are going under. The good news about this is that this is treatable. This is solvable. We can't solve everything in America, but we can solve this. Because we can control our spending habits. And so when you read about people, and I want to show you, I really want you to view this as a positive message today. I was reading this story this last week of a guy who turned his life around financially. Here's what he said. He said he started making financial changes. He said, I made a 180-degree change in my finances. And listen to this. In turn, it melted my anxiety away. And I no longer have to worry about financial things. I read that sentence and I'm like, the first thing I thought was, I want that for all my kids. All my kids. I want all of them to know that sense of peace about finances. I want all of them to experience that. But I also want that for all of you. For all of you who are here, all of you who are watching online, I want this for every single one of us. That you would know this sentence, that it melted my anxiety away and I don't have to worry about financial things. Now, in an environment like this, a world like this, that may sound like a pipe dream, but I'm telling you it isn't. It doesn't have to be the way it is. So we're starting a brand new series today, and I'm just calling it Dollars and Cents. We're going to talk just for 2 weeks about what the Bible has to say about money, and we're going to start with this one. I really want to show you how it's possible in a world like ours to eliminate debt. So I want to ask you to open up your program, and inside are these notes. I want to ask you to grab your notes, grab a pen. Welcome to those of you who are watching online as well. So if you're watching on our website at penulchurchlife.com, you have these notes. You can open them up and follow along. So we're going to jump right into this. The first thing that has to happen if we're going to really deal with this issue of debt is we have to get God's view on debt. It's the first thing that has to happen. We have to get his view on debt. What does God actually think about this subject of debt? But before we get into that, we need to start with reality, right? You can't solve a problem. If you know anything of problem solving, the very first step in problem solving is to identify where you actually are. Where are we today as a nation? Take a look at this. Credit card debt. 80% of all adults have at least one credit card. 45% of them carry a balance every month, and that's the average balance. $14,000 in credit card debt. Now, one of the interesting things that happened in COVID, have you heard this? We paid down credit card debt by 11% as a nation. Fascinating. And there are all kinds of reasons people are speculating why it went down. But it used to be worse. So good news, we're down to 14,000. So in my mind, I'm a little bit cynical about this. I'm thinking, well, what do you think will happen when COVID is really over? Think that'll keep going down by 11% a year? Yeah, right, we all know. It's like, woohoo, we're free. Out comes the card, and on we go. Student loans, this one's a rough one. The average person with student loans carries $35,000. For young people, 18 to 29, it's 1/3 of their debt. And it has serious consequences for these young people. Did you know that 47% of young people have put off buying a home because of their college debt? So almost half. Because you think about it, if you graduate with $35,000 and you marry somebody else who graduated with $35,000, you got $70,000 in college debt between the two of you. And I know lots of people with way more than that. So you already almost have a big chunk of a mortgage in your college debt before you even buy a house. So they have to put it off. They can't afford to do it. Did you know that 21% of all people in that age range put off getting married because of their college debt? And this is the world that we live in right now. And people just think this is normal, this is how it has to be, and maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. Car loans, 37% of all households in America have car loans, and the average is $30,000 in car loans. They're driving way nicer cars than me. $30,000. Now, of course, many of them, that's not one car, that's a whole series of cars, because they couldn't pay off the last one, so they replaced it and rolled that into the next one, they rolled that into the next one, and they just keep stacking it up higher and higher. The average car payment is somewhere between $300 to almost $600 a month. I mean, it's just massive draw. So you think about some poor young person who doesn't understand how finances work. I mean, how many of you graduated and knew anything about money? I knew nothing when I got out of high school. I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook. So all of a sudden you're like, someone wants to give me money to go to college? Awesome. Here's your $600 a month college payment. Someone wants to give me money to buy a car? Look at that thing. Yeah, here's your $500 a month car payment. So between the two, you got $1,000, you got a mortgage payment before you've even done anything in life, before you even know which end is up. I mean, this is our reality. The interesting thing, I was thinking about this last week as I was prepping this, this is not how it used to be. Your grandparents and your great-grandparents never did this. They never did it. They lived by completely different rules in their time. They lived by rules that said, if I can't pay cash for it, I can't afford it. And I won't buy it. Yeah, but you can go into debt and have the payment now. And they're like, no, I'm not doing that. It's dumb. I'd be in debt for something disposable that's going to go down in value while I'm paying it off. Why would I do that? They lived a completely different way. They made do with what they had, right? They went by, if they couldn't afford it, they just did without it. They figured something else out. And we don't really share those values. By the way, mental illness has skyrocketed as our values toward money have shifted. Depression, anxiety, these are the constant medication of Americans today. We're overloaded. They didn't have those kind of issues. And they lived through World War II and the Great Depression. Just imagine if we had to go through those things. Oh my goodness. What super drugs would they have to create just to keep us sane? It's not like they had nothing challenging going on in those days. Our attitudes towards money have shifted so much. And I want you to hear me clearly say this. I am not saying it's a sin in God's eyes to be in debt. It's not. Some pastors would teach this, some Christians and churches will teach us. That's not true. And we know that's not true because of this verse. The Bible said, God said to the nation of Israel, the Lord your God will bless you as he has promised you, and you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. That eliminates the idea that it could ever be sin. Because if it was sin, God would not say, all right, I'm not going to make you guys sin by going into debt, but you're going to make everyone else around you sin by putting them in debt. Nope. He would never say that. If it's wrong, he just wouldn't say that sentence. That wouldn't be in the Bible. So it's not a sin to have debt, but it is super dangerous. All of you, I think, understand that it's very, very dangerous. So what is it? What's God's view? So the first thing is, the way he looks at it, it's not his plan for your life. That is not his will for your life at all. This is not what he wants for you. And you see that because you look at what debt is in the Bible. Look what he says. The borrower is a servant to the lender. How many of you think that's God's picture for your future? Yeah, I want you enslaved to so much debt that you feel like you can't even function. Does that sound like a good, loving dad to you? Like, no way. He doesn't want this for you. I tell you, COVID changed things, right, as a nation. Actually, what I should say is COVID accelerated things that were already in play. COVID accelerated problems that were already there as a nation. We were already spending too much, and COVID really exaggerated just how much trouble we're actually in. When you have 2/3 to 3/4 of the entire American population living paycheck to paycheck, regardless of income level, it just exposed how messed up we are with money. One of the things that I get concerned about when I think into the future, because the bill we're not done paying the bill from COVID, because we continue to have a moratorium on evictions for people who can't pay their rent and foreclosures on people who can't afford to pay their mortgages. So the true depth of how upside down some people are, it's still coming. When that moratorium is lifted, there will be people who lose their house and lose their apartment because they can't afford it. And the truth is, they never could afford it. But easy credit made it so that it looked like they could. You think this is what God wants for any of them? Not a chance. And he says that if you follow him and you take a debt out, then he expects you to repay it, because the wicked borrow and never repay. There's no way anyone who follows Jesus should ever be called wicked. And there were a lot of people who really encountered the challenges of debt last year. I had a friend who lost their job. And they had bills that had to be paid because they had gone into debt. And the stress and anxiety they went through as I watched, it was so overwhelming. And you think that's what God's plan is for us? No shot. He loves you and wants what's best for you, and debt is not a path that he wants you on. The second reason why he's really not in favor is because of what it does to our relationships. And we know that it is damaging to our relationships. Did you know, and I was actually surprised because I thought this would be higher, more than half of all couples go into their partnership with debt. I thought that would be much higher. 40% say that the financial burden ends up having a negative impact on their relationship. Yeah. But here's what we know. Fidelity did a study recently, and they showed that couples who are concerned about paying down debt are also more likely to suffer from poor communication, fighting, and difficulty having conversations about money. There was a study at Utah State University and said that fighting about finances is a top predictor of divorce. Did you know that couples who fight frequently about money are 30% more likely to divorce? 30% more likely to be divorced if money is a source of conflict in your relationship. One of the most interesting things I read, though, was from a divorce attorney. So he deals with this all the time. His job every day is to help people get divorces. He said this. He said, people don't walk into my office and announce, we want a divorce because we're having money problems. But he said, ultimately, money is at the root of many divorces. When you can't communicate about money, then neither party is going to recognize when they're living beyond their means or when you need to cut back on your expenses. That is so true. I don't know if you've ever, I talk a lot about a man named Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey helped get me free from debt, change my whole perspective on this subject years ago. So Dave Ramsey has a podcast every day, Monday through Friday. It's a 3-hour show. Sometimes I'll go on a walk. Like yesterday, I went on a walk. I just put on the podcast and just listen. And I can't tell you how many times I heard stories just like the one I heard yesterday. This young woman called in, married for a little while now. They have a baby. You could hear the baby in the background, and the woman was just crying because she and her husband are not on the same page. This is usually what happens. A spender marries a saver. A spender marries a saver. And who wins in that relationship? Almost always the spender. So the spender was spending. In this case, it was the husband. He wasn't going to stop spending. He wanted a new truck now. He had spent all of their income beyond what they could afford to live on. And he was about to buy something else huge. And she was just crying. And she's like, I don't know what to do. We can't pay our bills now. And he won't stop. It was a sad phone call, such a common tale in America, such a common tale. And when they were done, Dave was saying to the other person that was hosting with him, said, that's going to end up in a marriage counselor's office, if they're lucky. If they're lucky. I can't tell you how many relationships end because of this. They will not stop. They're not on the same page. So you think that's what God's plan is for you? He wants to see that kind of conflict? No chance. That's why he doesn't like this subject of debt. And then the third thing is it keeps us from giving and living like God really wants us to. It's like a weight that you voluntarily chain around your ankles. It is so awful, and it can keep you from the life that God wants you to have. Here are just some of the things you get if you get serious about debt and eliminate debt. Just some of the things. First off, you get to keep all the interest on your money. Do you know what the average credit card interest rate is right now? So those people carrying a balance of $14,000, the average interest rate is over 16%. Do you know how rich you are if you can invest some money and get 16% every single year? You are rich. And that's why credit card companies are rich. They keep charging that, and we keep paying it. And if you get out of debt and you don't owe to a credit card company or a car company, then all of that interest that you were giving to them, you get to keep. You don't have to pay it away. You don't have to give it away. You can handle emergencies. Did we have any emergencies in 2020? Anything go wrong in 2020? Oh my goodness. You think we're done? You think we'll never have another emergency as a nation? We're not done with this. Two things never tell you they're coming, right? Remember this? Two things. Emergencies and opportunities. And when you don't have debt, you can take advantage of opportunities. I told the story once about a good friend of mine who lives wisely with money. He doesn't make a lot. He controls it through his expenses. And by living way below his means, he has no debt. He constantly saves and saves and saves. And a couple of years ago, he was telling me about this deal. He was on Facebook Messenger and he saw this car for sale. It was a Lexus. This person was just trying to get rid of it. It was an incredible deal. He paid $4,000 for a Lexus. And he paid cash. Because he saw it, called, went down, test drove it, brought in the cash. Two things never tell you they're coming. Emergencies and opportunities. And when you live below your means and you are saving and doing things the way God wants you to, you get to buy a Lexus for $4,000. That's a good deal. You can make your kids' lives better. If you have children or grandchildren, you can help others, which is, again, for me as a Christian, what I'm so passionate about. So it used to be, and you know this is true, it used to be that in America, debt was a four-letter word, right? It used to be that way. We need to get back to that. And if you listen to Dave Ramsey, you will hear that he hates debt. Hates it. You want to know why? By the way, this is Dave Ramsey, for those of you who've never seen him. It's because he used to believe in everything that America was selling. He used to believe it. He built a business on the back of debt. He was constantly using debt. And he stacked his debts up so high that the day came, and this is what happens. You go one debt too far, and something changes, and he lost everything. They took his house away. And it was when he hit bottom that he finally said, enough is enough, I need to do something different. And he stopped listening to all the messages that we've heard all our lives. That debt is fine, and debt's cool, and debt's a tool, and it's awesome. And he stopped, and he changed. And then when his life started getting better, he started telling others, and pretty soon he's telling everybody. And pretty soon he starts this course called Financial Peace University, and he wanted to help people take their life back, and that's exactly what he did. And it came from his tremendous pain. He suffered and suffered until he's like, enough, enough. And I hope that enough Americans hear that and they're like, yep, enough, we need to change this. But the key is this. The key is you have to learn to hate debt. Because of how much it actually takes away from us, you hate it. Those are the people. I've been teaching Financial Peace University. I've taught it 4 times. I've led the class 4 times. I have seen people succeed and I've seen people fail. And I'll tell you the number one thing with people who win with debt is they start hating it. They hate it. I literally have the story here of a family that paid off $97,000 in credit card debt. $97,000. They said this, the key, debt is the enemy and we have to slay it. And once you get God's view on it, it's like, I'm not gonna intentionally chain myself anymore. That's when you start to win with debt. I can't tell you how many times I've been in those classes where I've heard people saying, well, you know, and I get that's kind of, maybe not all that good. Maybe it's a little bit bad, but you're not going to win. You won't win. Till you hate it, you won't slay it. His view is he doesn't want this as a part of your life. So what's your view? How do you look at it? See, once you have God's view on it, it's like, this is something to hate. I don't want it a part of my life. Now you can actually start doing something with it, which is number 2, and we're going to go through this real quick. You implement the right plan, and there are a lot of different plans out there. I'm going to show you the Dave Ramsey plan because that's what I live by, and it's worked for me and worked for thousands and thousands of people who've done it. They're all you all have a plan, all of you. You all live on a plan, all of you. Your plan may be ignore my money and pay my bills as best as I can. Plenty of people, I lived on that plan for years. I lived on a plan that said, whatever they'll loan me, that's what we can afford. I did that. Whatever my monthly payments I can afford, that's what I can afford. I did it all wrong. So I know both sides of this. I've done it wrong, I've done it right. I read about a couple, Natalie and Larry, they had 13 credit cards. 13. They had 2 personal loans. They had a huge mortgage, and then they had an emergency, and they lost the house. Their plan was terrible. It put them on a path to financial ruin. But today, they would say to you, we thank God for losing our house, because it was only when they hit rock bottom that they decided we need to change our plan. Unfortunately, for way too many Americans haven't hit rock bottom yet. I want to prevent that if I can. For anyone who will listen, don't wait till you've been just terribly hurt. Get on the right plan. Here's how to do it. Go to daveramsey.com and search for Financial Peace University in the search tab. By the way, you can see that it's a kind of a new thing they're doing, and it's like a year thing, and it's $129 for your year, and you get all these new tools they've created. Some of you may be terrified by that number. I'll tell you, we've talked about this as a church in the past. We will help you with that $129. If that is, you can't even afford that to start getting your finances in order, we will help you. You just ask and we'll help. But we will not give you all of it. Because in the past, as a church, I've been a part of churches where we did this, where we gave them all of it. Do you know how many of those people completed the class? 0. So we won't do that. But if you really are serious and you're like, this is the year I want to be different, I want to live a different kind of life with finances, and you can't afford that, you let us know. We will help you. We will help you get this started, because we'll put our money where our mouth is, because I believe in this so much. So then what do you do next? Well, the first thing you do is you immediately save $1,000 for an emergency fund, immediately, because you are going to have an emergency in 2021. It's a guarantee. $1,000 in emergency fund, and nothing is an emergency, nothing. A vacation is an emergency. Do you know how many times I've heard people say that? It's an emergency vacation. Okay, that's not an emergency. Your cell phone dying and having to get the latest version of that is not an emergency. They sell cheaper ones that actually make calls, right? I know it won't be the greatest world supercomputer, so you can hack the FBI mainframe, but do you really need to? I mean, yeah, but it doesn't have 48 billion pixels on the pictures, and I've got 27,000 pictures in my phone that I never even look at. Okay, so you really need to keep spending on that? I'm amazed at what people pay for a cell phone. Jeez, I mean, we're out of control. It's like, it's not an emergency. You can get by with less. So the Bible's really clear about this. Look at this. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. Now, 63 to 75% of Americans devour all they have, and all they have tomorrow and the next day and the next month and the next year. They've devoured for years, right? They are so upside down in debt, they have spent tomorrow's money. So the Bible says that's not wise. Wise people live below their means and they keep saving. So immediately, $1,000, because you're going to have an emergency. Something's going to happen. Do you know 44% of Americans before COVID couldn't handle a $400 emergency? Have you had a car breakdown recently? You will spend $400 like that. Do you know how much the average out-of-pocket expense is for one medical issue? $1,000. You're going to have any in the future? You're never going to go to the doctor again? Good luck with that plan. We can't live this way. It's not reality. We have to face reality. One of my kids, their washing machine broke. I was at their house, the washing machine broke. So we went shopping for washing machines. Have you looked at washing machines lately? Oh my goodness. Goodbye your $400 right there in one shot. And that's kind of an emergency. You kind of have to wash clothes. Or just keep buying clothes, but that's more expensive. So anyway, you're going to have emergencies. You immediately put that aside, and nothing is an emergency. You protect it. The second thing you do is you pay off all your debt except the house, all of it. And this is where people are like, are you kidding me? And they groan and they feel hopeless. This is the one that's going to make you feel hopeless. Right here, because we've dug such deep holes. And this is where you are going to need a plan in order to accomplish that. Do you know the Bible actually says this? The plans of the diligent lead to profit. That's financial profit. That's not metaphorical profit. That's money. It surely is. Haste leads to poverty. Do you think that Americans are characterized by haste in their spending? It's like, how patient are we at saving up and waiting for things to buy them in the future once we've saved enough? We don't wait for anything. And because of that, that's why we're so upside down. You need a plan on how you're going to get out of debt. So the plan, of course, is everybody's favorite B word, a budget. That's what a spending plan is. A budget is a spending plan, and you tell every dollar every month. I sit down and I do this every month. Every dollar, here's what I know is coming up for the next month, here's what I've got for income, and I tell every dollar where to go, because if you don't tell it all where to go, it will go wherever it wants to go, and at the end of the month, you may not like where it just went. A budget is you telling every dollar, you take control of your finances, here's my expenses, here's my income, and I tell every single month where it's all going to go. Do you know how rare that is? 60% of Americans have no budget at all. 60%. So if this is a typical audience, half of you don't have a budget. You cannot win with money without controlling where it goes. You cannot win, because it will just leave. How many of you at the end of every month say, man, I got so much money left over. Wow, I don't even know what to do with it all, right? It just keeps going and going and going unless you start taking control, and a budget's how you take control of it. Now, you want to see how powerful this tool is, and I know some people absolutely hate the B word. They hate it. Believe me, I taught it 4 times. You know how many times I heard people's inner toddler come out with the budget? It's like, that's what it is. It's like, but I want to spend what I want to spend whenever I want to spend it. How can, and then especially when they get really mad at their saving spouse, the spending spouse who wants to just keep spending and spending and spending gets really mad at the saving spouse. It's like, how, I don't want to feel controlled. Oh, so you're okay getting whatever you want at taking advantage of them. It's totally fine for you to get what you want as long as you hurt them. And they get hurt? No, a budget puts you on the same page. That's all a budget does. A budget done right, which Dave Ramsey's course will show you exactly how to do it. You both come to the table, you agree on how it's all going to go, and all of a sudden you're functioning as one. 2 are becoming 1. That's why I love it so much. It's so important. So I want to show you this. NBC did a study and did a survey of Americans going through COVID. Did you know there are Americans who lived through COVID with little to no financial stress at all? Now, it's not the super zillionaires. Not at all. 30% of the people who went through this lost their job and still had little to no financial stress. Could you imagine losing your job and having little to no financial stress? 15% of them earned less than $50,000 a year household income and still had little to no financial stress. What were their secrets? What did they have in common? Well, look at this. 76% of them were on a budget. 92% of those people checked their budget every week or more than once a week. 92% of them had a large emergency fund before COVID hit. They were handling money the right way, telling it where to go every month, controlling their expenses, keeping their expenses below their income so they could save, so when COVID came, they were already prepared. That's how you go through it without a crisis. You get ahead of it. Start preparing now. Then the third thing you do is once, and again, I want to show you this slide right here. One of the cool things about Dave Ramsey's show, and you can look this up, is if once you're debt-free, if you followed his practices and get debt-free, then they let you come on the radio and you can tell your story and then you do a debt-free shout, we're debt-free! And I put this up here, and I know it's way too small for you to see, but I put it up here because I wanted you to see how long it took them to get out of debt. The shortest one on this picture, and I could have put so many, because every day there's people shouting, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, 7 years. 7 years. Can you imagine how long it took that couple when they started charting out 7 years? Do you know what emotion you feel when you can see that it's going to take you 7 years to get debt free? You feel despair and hopeless, like it will never ever happen. Do you know what's going to happen though? I guarantee it. Time will pass. Time will pass. And it's either going to pass and bring you what you want, or it's going to pass and put you deeper in a hole. You don't have a choice. Time is going to pass. So you might as well get on the right path and let time bring you what it brought all of them, debt freedom. I know that this is how people feel. They feel completely hopeless when they hear this the first time. I remember how I felt when I was in my late 30s and I sat down and took FPU for the first time and I started making a list of all our debts. We had a home equity line of credit. We had a credit card that was about $14,000. I don't even remember how much we had on our home equity line of credit. I think it was 20. We had a car payment. We had all of this debt, and I started doing the monthly thing about how long it's going to take, and you feel like this is never going to happen. And you know what happened? Time goes like that. That was 14 years ago that I paid that debt off. You don't have a choice. Time's going to pass. Let it pass for you. It's going to happen. So go after it, because 7 years will pass. They paid off $450,000, that middle one, in 7 years. Imagine how despairing and hopeless they felt when they saw that number. Time will pass. Start doing the right thing, and it'll work for you. Then you save, once you're done with that one, the third one is you save 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. By the way, if you want more ideas on how to get out of debt, Google it. Google creative ideas on how to get debt free. And there are so many people who are doing it. They'll tell you, hey, we cut this, we did this, we saved this much a month, and you can put all that toward your debt. Again, once you start hating debt, you can attack that debt, and then you can really start making progress with it. And then you save 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses in an emergency fund. So this is, again, that verse again about wise people store up stuff. So if you have $3,000 a month in expenses, you know that 3 times 3,000 would be 9,000 or 18,000 if you go 6 months. So do you know how you feel once you have $18,000 in an emergency fund? By the way, do you know why he says 3 to 6 months? Do you know how long the average person is unemployed in America? 3 to 6 months. That's how you can lose your job in the middle of COVID and not feel much anxiety when you've already lived this way. Because you know you'll be okay while you're looking for a job. There's a good reason why it's called financial peace. You can live this way. You can get there. Now, the first 3 are hard. I've already passed the first 3. I've already accomplished this. It's the next ones that become really fun. Once you're past 1, 2, and 3, then you get into the fun ones. Investing 15% retirement. I don't even have time to talk to you how sad it is to see the statistics and how much the average American hasn't saved for retirement. They're going to be able to retire for about 10 minutes. And then they're out of money. And if you think Social Security is the solve, oh boy. Right? You can't live that way. So, and I like working, so I don't ever know. I will always be doing something. If it's greeting at Walmart, you'll see me at 90 out there saying, hi, here's a sticker, welcome. Do we give stickers anymore? That'll be me, so I know that. So that's fine. Save for your kids' education. I really, really regret this, that I didn't know this when I was young and having kids. So my kids didn't have a lot of help from me financially. I regret that. I wish I could have done more. The Bible is really big on helping your kids. It actually says good people leave an inheritance even for their grandchildren. So now that's what I want to do, and change my family tree so that my children have something to receive from me and my grandchildren. I want to help change their financial future. Then you get to pay off your house, step 6. Do you know what happens when you pay your house off and all of a sudden you're using your entire mortgage to invest and save? You know what you get to do then? Anything you want to do. Then you get into the fun ones. And I know that there's somebody who like, well, that's not financially savvy because you get a tax deduction. Who cares? If you're taking that money and investing in a good mutual fund earning 12%, that's more than what you're going to earn in a tax savings. And because what you're doing then is you're building wealth so that you can give generously. That's what it's about for us as followers of Jesus. It is not so we can eat caviar every day and go on huge trips and lobster and drive super duper cars. That fell apart there at the end, but it's so we can do this. So we can give generously to the poor, not grudgingly, for the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. Do you know what happens when you live this way? You can give and give and give in response to any need God puts in front of you that you feel prompted to give. And then you get joy, because there's joy in giving. It's the best life. It's the path he wants for all of you. Now, I really want to be careful about this. I hope that I have not communicated in any way any kind of judgment to those of you who are in debt. In case you haven't heard this, I screwed this up so bad in my life. When I took FPU and I took that course, I was all wrong. Every everything was wrong, and I felt despair and hopeless. And so it took years to pay that off and get back on a good track, and then we started saving. Okay, you want honesty? I fell off the wagon twice. Fell off the FPU wagon twice. We actually built up our emergency fund, got it to $20,000. We had no debt, so we were doing it all right. And then I blew every dollar of my emergency fund on non-essentials. Well, we were on this vacation, and it's really cool, kind of like a timeshare thing. And so we're like, well, we might as well buy that. And then, well, let's replace this vehicle. Well, let's replace this vehicle. We took our 20 to 2. And then we had an emergency. And our emergency fund was gone. Oops. And then, got back on track. Things are going okay. And then 2016 hit, rough year for me. And then I put on $6,500 in debt and had nothing to show for it. Not like I bought a car for $6,500, just blew it. Then I stopped digging that hole, and then I played a little game for about a year and a half where you ever played this game? Let's rotate our debt to different credit cards that have no interest. And I played that game, and I kept rotating it, till finally, it was about 3 years ago, that I was sick of it. I'm like, I'm done. I'm back to who I am. I hate debt. I'm done with that. And so I went after it aggressively, and I was storing up every dollar, trying to overpay my credit card, pay that thing down, pay it down. I had to pay an interest payment on it. It made me so mad. It's like, oh, my little game caught me. I was so angry at myself, and I just kept tracking it, and I kept working, and last February, I paid off my last payment and got debt-free 1 month before COVID hit. And I took a pay cut to stay in my job, and it's like, whoa, you don't think I was grateful that I had done that before COVID? So please don't hear me saying, I know this stuff and have blown it twice. I have no intention of blowing it again, but hey, who knows? Well, I'll tell you that story if I do. But the upper steps are the fun ones, so please don't feel judged by me. There are 4 groups of people listening to me right now. Some of you don't care. I have not convinced you at all. You are in the process of going into debt right now for something that's going to depreciate in value. And I have not swayed you at all. I know that. I know there are people listening. Some already turned it off. They didn't even make it this far. They're like, yeah, don't care. Some people will see this title of this message and not even click it because they want to keep spending. All I can do is tell you I've been on both paths, and I'll tell you this one is so much better, it's not even worth talking about. If I lost my job tomorrow, I would have no concerns for the next 6 months. My fear and stress level would be so low because I'm on step 4. I've paid off. I've got my fully funded emergency fund. I can reduce my expenses to so little and just be fine while I'm waiting for God to reveal what comes next for me. You can live that way. Some of you, though, you've hit rock bottom. You're tired of this. You are sick of living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Great. Get sick of it. So now you can deal with it. Go to daveramsey.com, sign up for FPU. If you need our help, ask us, and we will help you gladly. Build that $1,000 immediately. Throw it into emergency fund, and nothing is an emergency. Protect it. It's not for eating out. It's not for a new wardrobe. That's not an emergency. And you keep it safe, and then you attack that debt. Now, I've taught this so many years. I know many of you know these things. Some of you, this is a refresher. Because some of you just needed this reminder, because it's relentless in our world. It's like constantly spend more. You don't have enough stuff. You need more. Your life would be better. And the nonstop messages, your life would be so much better if you only owned this. Look at this. Won't your life be better? And you can afford the payments. And we have this, and I do this little series every year to try and counteract this a little bit, kind of reset us back to normal. It's like, nope, that's not normal. Normal America's broke. I don't want you to be normal. It should be different. Some of you, this is just a reminder. Some of you are already free. Stay there. Stay there. Make no mistake, for all of us, God expects us to pay our debts. Spiritually, there is a tremendous parallel. Just like you incur a debt in this world, you have to pay it. The Bible says that we've all incurred a debt with God himself. A debt not financial. It's a debt created by all of our unloving things we have brought and said and done in this world. Can you even think about how many times you've been unkind? How many unloving things we've done? And the reason it matters is because God is love. He is love. And to be with him, Jesus said you have to be like him. As a matter of fact, he said you have to be perfect like he is perfect. No shot. We've created a debt. And this is where it's incredible. What the message of Christianity is, Jesus will pay your debt for you. Completely paid in full. That's the true message of Christianity. You either try and pay it by being good and doing all this religious stuff, which is impossible. Good doesn't cancel out bad. Ever. Never does. Doesn't cancel out in our world. If you do something really, really evil, rob a bank, and then give all the money to the poor, you're not going to be just set free. Good doesn't cancel out bad anywhere. The debt has to be paid, and Jesus paid it on the cross. Let me have you bow your heads as we finished. Maybe the next step for you spiritually is to let Jesus Christ give you something incredible. He will pay your debt if you let him. And more than that, he won't just stop there. He will not only forgive you, he will put you in his family, and then all of his promises become yours. You get his involvement in your life, his activity, doing things for you that you could never do on your own. And if you're ready for this incredible gift, with your head bowed and your eyes closed, say something like this to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I know that I am not perfect and I've done things wrong. I've been unloving in my life, I know it. But I heard that you died on the cross to pay that debt. I don't understand all of it yet. But I'm asking you today to please cancel my debt. I'm asking you to forgive me. Make your home inside of me today. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, can I ask you all to take this little card out of your program? Even if you're a regular attender, you just put your name down, just let us know. But if you prayed and asked for that gift, just check the box, let us know. We'll send you some follow-up stuff in the mail. And also, if you're watching online, we have a new button on our website, PennychurchLife.com. And it's a I said yes button. You can check that box, let us know what you've done, and then we'll send you that same follow-up material. Thanks so much for coming. I hope to see you again next week.